Okay everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with the FIA Nations Round number 6 at Monza. So we did this race twice. First race was this one now, starting from P3. Didn't really hook the qualifying up in this race. And you can see we've got some reasonably fast drivers in this race. We've got Pat Home in P1 there. We've got Niche just behind ourselves. Super GT was in this race as well. I can't remember exactly where he was starting, but I think it was just outside the top 10 possibly. But you can see straight away from the start, picking up that massive slipstream. P1 loses that position. The top qualifying driver pretty much always going to lose the top spot going into turn 1 because of the no chicane variation of the track. The massive slipstream you gain. Obviously GT Sport slipstream is a little bit over the top. It's a little bit too powerful in my view. It should be weakened very slightly. They obviously want to keep the overtaking going on, but I think it just needs a slight little adjustment just so it's not quite as strong, because you could see how much of an advantage that was for P2. Really pole position was like P2 on the grid. But you can see starting straight away, and it looks like the driver in the lead, is he going to just go over the curb a little bit too aggressive there? And I think he picked up a penalty, and he's actually got to slow down as he goes through the penalty zone. So that's give Patom the ability to get back in the lead, and I'm now into P2. So we're going to have to try and stay with Patom as much as possible. Although one thing I really didn't like with this car was actually being in the slipstream. I actually preferred to be about 1.2 seconds behind the car in front in terms of keeping your own pace, because I found when you were in the slipstream with this car, it's got so much power, but the downforce is nowhere near as much as the other Group 1 cars like the Porsche Hybrid and stuff like that. So it's a lot harder to drive in someone's slipstream in a car like this, and because of the extreme speeds, you do lose a lot of downforce. As you can see, picking up a massive slipstream again. Had a little look up the inside, but decided not really worth going for that. Backed out of it, braked nice and early, and just tried to make sure I got through the chicane without any incident. You can see Patom in front actually pushed really hard through there, while I actually backed out of it. So possibly I should have backed out that corner a little bit earlier and tucked back into the normal racing line to try not to lose too much time. But I was having a little look at the overtake there and decided not to go for it. It was it's such a risky overtake because you're coming from such a high speed, over 220 miles per hour, and hitting the brakes at that speed is really hard to judge, braking that few feet late. So I decided not to risk it, held on to P2 at this stage of the race, and now we've actually dropped out the slipstream now. So this is actually not that bad for me, because once I'm out the slipstream I feel a little bit more confident. However, we've got Niche behind us in the other Group C car, the Nissan behind me, and he's going to be picking up the slipstream, and I haven't actually got the slipstream now as we go on to the main straight. And are we going to be able to hold on to this P2? It looks like we've got about 4 to 5 tenths gap to P3, and you can see I'm going to that right hand side of the track, and then we're going to go back over to the left hand side to try and break the slipstream slightly and avoid him picking up a massive draft. You can see he's picking it up, but he's not quite in position to get on the inside for this really fast long right hand corner, and that's good for me because then I can go defensive on the left hand side. He's not really in position again to make a move. He backed out of that much like I did on the other lap with P1. So it was, if you had a sensible driver behind you, you would find that they wouldn't really go for that move. It was just really risky to try and brake late there. So the drivers with a little bit more racecraft were tending not to go for the move and just backing out of it. As you can see, he actually looks like he got a bad exit from that second Lesmo there, which actually gave me the ability to build a little bit of a gap up again and hopefully try and defend from him as we approach the back straight again before the final straight. Because this is a problem with Monza, is if they're in your slipstream at this point now, they're going to build that slipstream all the way up into the final corner. Then they get a little bit of oversteer, understeer, and the car not feeling quite right when you're close in someone's slipstream through the final corner, but then they're going to pick that slipstream back up. But you can see I'm starting to hone back in on P1, nearly about to pick that slipstream back up. So you can see the speed was 100% there. Once I was out of the slipstream, I could really get on with it and put some lap times in again as we start another lap. And like I say, just picking up the slipstream, it seemed to be about an equal distance between myself, P1 and then P3. The gap seemed fairly equal in between all three cars. You can see that Niche is dropping back a bit now. When once I had like a clear bit of track without being in slipstream, I was able to really get on with it a bit better and put some more solid lap times down. As again, coming up to the very tricky chicane, obviously coming from such a high speed, it's really tricky to pick your braking spot. I was trying to be ultra cautious really. I didn't want to be braking too late, and you know, if you brake even a fraction late on that corner, you pick up a penalty, and it's not worth it at this track, because where the penalty zone was, it was in such a high speed zone. If you picked up even a 1 second penalty, it was like a 3 second loss. So the aim was obviously in these races was to try and avoid getting penalties at all costs, basically, as you come through to the Ascari chicane, trying to hook that up perfectly. And looks like Pato in front there makes a mistake. He doesn't quite hook the apex of the corner up. Now what I decided to do here was not go for the overtake. You can see I actually lifted off a bit, and I didn't really want to go for a move at this point. I wanted to back off and try and get myself the slipstream on the main straight, because that's where you want to be overtaking someone. You don't really want to be overtaking someone there, because then they're going to get your slipstream going down this straight, and then you just pretty much lost the position again. So what I did there was obviously back out, then pick up the slipstream now, then go over to the right hand side. And what you can see I do is I go all the way over to the right hand side, just so that he can't then try and tuck in behind me and pick up that slipstream. So I'm staying all the way over to the right, and we've got ourselves into P1, which is pretty much vital now. And what we've got to do now is just try and hold on to this P1 all the way to the end of the race if possible, as we come through to the braking zone again. Very hard to pick your braking spot there. You can see again, trying to make sure I brake early. That is one thing to see, even with the extra wear on, you had to just keep just short, like making that braking distance was a little bit longer every lap, because obviously we were running the soft tyres for both stints in this race, not using the medium tyres, because the medium tyres tended to wear, they might look like they wear a bit better, but once they go to about halfway on the tyre wear, the medium tyres, the grip levels just disappear, and the softer tyres still maintain more actual traction to the track. So that's why you'll find most people in top splits towards the front end of the grid will always go for the softer compound tyre, because it actually provides more grip overall, and then you've got the speed advantage that it provides for the first three laps or so. So you can see now in the distance, it looks like Patton's had another issue there, as Nisha's actually took P2 from him, and now I've got about a 1.5 2-second gap to P2 as we go into the pit stop phase. So this is where we're going to be pitting. Obviously what we needed to do for this stint was shorten this stint and extend the second stint. So the second stint was going to be a little bit hard, because we're going to have to do 6 laps on these soft tyres. However, this is the best way to do this strategy, because as your car becomes lighter, your car then becomes friendlier on the tyres. So you always want to try and do the shorter stint first, because obviously you've got the heavier fuel. It's going to take a lot of tyre wear out. If you try and extend that first stint, you're going to find you're going to lose a lot of time. So you also get the undercut with this effect, so you gain a lot of time on anyone who's not doing the obviously pit on lap 5, they're trying to pit on lap 6. So I would always advise, if you're going for the softer compound tyre, you're going to split it with 11 laps or something like that, and you're using the softest compound, always do the shorter stint first and then the longer stint last, because the tyres will last better when your car becomes lighter. I've said it many times before. I just like to reinforce that every time I do a video, and it's so important, because you can get nearly pretty much an extra half a lap, maybe more, out of the tyres once the fuel's gone down. And that's what we're going to try and do now, see if we can make them all last all the way to the end. This is a very similar race. We had this race on a daily race not long ago, I think you might remember. It was a daily race C, exactly the same settings, tyre wear, fuel, a number of laps and tyre compound. So they've just done a copy and paste from that race and put it onto an FIA race. As you've seen, we go very wide out of that Ascari chicane. Fortunately didn't lose a massive, we lost about 4 or 5 temps as we couldn't get on the power, but it wasn't a massive amount. You can see that Niche behind us there, just under 2 seconds behind us, about 1.9, something like that, 1.8 seconds behind. He's driving really aggressive now. He's trying to push to get in the slipstream. I'm just trying to keep the car quite smooth and not really, obviously we made that error out of the Ascari chicane, but other than that, just trying to not be too aggressive, because this is a stint now that you've got to do the extra lap on. We're in clear air at the moment, so the tyres are going to last that a little bit better as well. When you're in dirty air, your tyres will it will punish the tyres a little bit more, because the car's sliding more. Once the car slides, that's going to take your tyre wear out. So what we're going to do is try and be smooth, as progressive as we can on the throttle, but still being reasonably fast. You can see trying to attack the corners, hovering it around in third gear, then getting on the throttle and trying to pull out this corner as much as possible. You can see now that he's slowly gaining. He's definitely gaining on ourselves, and he's starting to put a bit of pressure on me at this stage. I knew I've obviously got the speed, because in the practice races we'd done the day before, we were actually driving a lot better than what we was at this stage. You can see the lap times are not really there. We haven't drove particularly amazing in this race. However, we're in P1, and that's the most important thing. If we can get to the end, pick up some solid points, and then we can go on to do another race. So you can see Niche behind. He is pushing. You can see how he's slowly getting that bottom right hand corner. You can see the camera. He's slowly getting closer to the rear of my car. He's about 1.5 seconds behind at this point, and he's not really in the slipstream range yet, and that's the main thing. All I had to really do was drive as smoothly as possible and avoid him getting the slipstream. And then if I can save my tyres for the last few laps, then I'm going to be able to just build that gap back up. That was the aim. Whether it was going to work, I wasn't 100% sure. Obviously, I didn't want to burn out the tyres with 11 lap race. It's really important to make sure you've got the tyres for the last 2 laps in case he does get in your slipstream, so you've got tyres to battle. As you see, running a little bit wide through that corner, but not actually losing too much time, probably gaining a bit of time there because we took a really high amount of speed coming out of the exit of the chicane. Now coming through the second Lesmo, hard on the power, actually really hooking that up nicely there, not running wide at all, keeping the car 100% on the track and getting real smooth acceleration. One thing that happens if you do get on the curb, car tends to bounce around a bit and you don't get as much traction when you're accelerating, especially in cars like this with a lot of power. So you can get better traction if you just keep it 100% on the track. And again, going through the Escaris chicane, much better this time, and now really starting to hook the corners up and pretty much matching Niche behind us now. We're pretty much holding him stationary at about 1.5 seconds as we now skip through to lap 10. And what you're going to see now, it was pretty much a very static race for them few laps there. You can see as we're coming to the end of lap 10, and we've still got him about 1.5 seconds behind. However, because we've looked after them tyres, the tyres are in really good condition. We've actually increased the gap a bit. You can see it on the bottom right hand corner. We've actually extended that lead slightly, and now we can just try and keep it smooth all the way to the finish. You can see there in P8, Super GT has managed to get himself into P8 at this stage of the race, just behind Pat Home. Not too sure what has actually happened to Pat Home in this race. He's dropped down from P3, he was in P3 behind Niche, and now he's into P7. So obviously he had some issues. He did have the speed, but obviously coming across some issues in the race and losing a lot of time. And so Super GT's obviously made some progress in the race. If you haven't checked out his channel, make sure you check out his Super GT's channel. Very good videos, very funny videos. I try to check out as many as possible, so most people will have already obviously subscribed to Super GT. But if you haven't, make sure you check his channel out. I tend to watch most of his streams as much as possible, not necessarily live. I tend to watch them after he's done them, because I stream as well most nights. So make sure you check that channel out. Anyway, getting back on with this race, coming through to the final corners in the race, you can see we've held this lead very nicely at this stage. We've actually pulled out a bit of more of an advantage now on this final lap, and this is probably because I've looked after the tyres, even though the tyres are quite warm. But this is with 6 laps on this stint. Obviously the first stint only had 5, however we had the fuel. Now we've got that extra lap, but we've got lighter fuel, and we've done a great job on the last few laps of looking after the tyres and coming over the finish and taking the win in that race. So that was a nice solid result. We picked up 2,300 points for that result. It wasn't the highest rated lobby, however that's partly due to the fact obviously we're still grinding our driver rating back up, so hopefully it will pick it up again at some point. So this race, next race on the list was a lot higher ranked. We managed to just creep into the top split with obviously our DR not being fully repaired yet. This race we qualified in P6, which was really disappointing. Again, I didn't hook the qualifying. If you would have watched the live stream, you can check out the live stream. We totally messed up the qualifying in this session. It went all wrong, and it just wasn't a very smooth running qualifying. So I really was looking. I think I had the pace to match P1's time at least, judging by the pace we did in practice session the day before. However, you can see straight off the start we managed to get a move on in the food. However, what you're going to see now is the slipstream effect. There's nothing you can do. Once I'm pulling out of the slipstream, and then as I pull back into the slipstream, that was so close. We got a massive amount of understeer as we just crossed the path of the slipstream and nearly lost control of the car. And then going into the chicane, we get hit from behind, which nudges us into the driver in front of us, which then I think might have tapped in the infield. I couldn't really see, but that wasn't not much we could do there. We got hit from behind by Matty, I think it was, who I'm not sure if he got hit by another driver, but he went into the corner a little bit too aggressive, hit the rear of my car, which then pushed me forward a little bit. But luckily for us, we're still in P5 in this race. We've made up 1 position from qualifying, and now we've got to try and settle down. Obviously that start was a little bit messy as we had to let Matty go through there, as I think he got obviously we didn't have a slipstream, he had the slipstream, and he's going to be able to breeze past us when you're in a situation like that, as we have another car there with an issue. Obviously picking up a penalty for a corner cut or contact. Something's happened there. We're now still in P5 again. So now we're going to get the slipstream off Matty going down the straight as I go in a little bit too aggressive into that corner, not really hooking it up. And unfortunately, that's give Matty the chance to build up quite a big slipstream, a gap before I can pick up the toe behind them as we go through to the replay camera. One thing you see now is they're having a go at me. They're trying to get past on the right hand side. However, I'm in the slipstream to Matty. So what this is doing is it's blocking them the chance to get past me. And now I'm able to hold on to my position, take the normal racing line, and keep P5 in this race as we come to the braking zone, making sure I brake not too late, but I've got to make sure that I brake late enough to defend against the driver's man. But Matty makes an error on the chicane. I'm going to go down the right hand side and try and get myself up into P4, which I do nicely there on the inside, and they're battling away there side by side there. A lot of close racing behind us, and we're into P4 now in this race. So far going okay. Obviously we've made up some positions as the car has had a massive issue in the background there. It looks like he's spun and hit himself into the wall. As we now approach the Ascari chicane, can we get through this chicane nice and cleanly to try and start getting some consistency together with this race? Obviously the first race we didn't really build up much consistency. However, there in front of us, Grasser has actually ran wide through the Ascari chicane, and he's lost massive momentum down the straight now as we're going to pick up his slipstream. At this stage I thought I'd be able to overtake him on the main straight. However, he goes very deep into this corner now. I think he did that on purpose. I've got a theory that he probably did that on purpose so that he would then pick up my slipstream down the straight, which is very good tactical driving. However, it's a bit frustrating for me because now I'm vulnerable because I'm the lead driver when I thought I would be behind another car, and I've got multiple cars behind me that are going to pick up the slipstream. You can see there M. Thomas also getting in on the slipstream, and I've actually lost 2 positions through making, I've actually lost the position, not 2. We gained 1, but then obviously he's got that back, and then we've lost 1 to M. Thomas through no fault of my own. It's just the fact that I couldn't pick up any slipstream off Grasser, and now we're back down to P5. So a little bit frustrating that situation. I really wanted to get past Grasser because I felt like I had more speed. I know obviously the speed I had when running in clean air, but like I say, many times I do struggle a bit when I'm in dirty air. It does seem to slow me down a bit. I have to drive a little bit more cautious because of the oversteer and understeer and the slipstream effect. You have to brake that a little bit earlier, so it's very tricky once you're in the slipstream. But you can see now a very close race going on now. We've got a driver right behind ourselves. We've got M. Thomas right in front of us and Grasser right in front of M. Thomas. So this is going to be a very close fought battle now all the way to the end. Can we make any progress in this race? It'll be interesting to see as we come through to the end of lap 3 now. The tyres are going to start obviously taking a little bit wear at this point. They're not going to be too bad. Obviously we're running the softer tyres again. It was 100% the best choice to make as we now pick up M. Thomas's slipstream. As we go down the straight, we've got a bit of a gap down to P6. It looks like P6 is just outside the slipstream, or might just be in it. I'm not too sure there. But this is where it's very dangerous, and we took it really patient in this race. You're going to see now we're picking up a big slipstream, picking up over 230 miles per hour through that corner, and that's 10 miles per hour faster than what you'd normally be doing. So I decided to just brake very early on the brakes. I think we were actually on the brakes before the 200 board, just so that we didn't miss the apex and just keeping it nice and smooth, because one thing I didn't want to do was go into there and brake where I normally do and just go straight into the back of M. Thomas, which would then hit Grasser and it'd ruin this race. So we braked really early, making sure that there's no incidents, and that was the tactic I wanted to do now, was just try at this point of the race now, because you're in a slipstream battle. There's no point being ultra aggressive, chewing up your tyres, wearing them out. The best thing I thought to do was just stick in the slipstream and just play it very safe and see how the race progresses as it goes on. I think I said on stream as well, there's just no point going for some of these moves. I could have been very aggressive and probably got past M. Thomas, but then we would have been battling, possibly lose the slipstream to Grasser, and then we're going to be battling each other, and then you're just giving the other drivers a chance to pull away. So what I wanted to do was just sit behind, stay in the slipstream and just play it really safe. You can see again picking up the slipstream massively now. We're going to get a massive tow all the way into this turn 1 again, because M. Thomas is picking up the slipstream from Grasser and he's getting the speed extension, so I'm getting a double tow now. So you're going to see what I mean by the extra speed. We're already at the speed you'd normally be going through turn 1, but I decided to back out. I actually lifted before the corner. I didn't really want to go through that corner right on the toe of M. Thomas and then into the braking zone, so I backed off, give a bit of a gap, on the brakes nice and early and just try and get out this corner nice and clean. You can see just making sure it's nice and safe. I actually had a little bit of oversteer on the exit of the corner, which lost me a bit of time, but we're still within the slipstream. That's the most important part. Just outside the slipstream from P6 it is there though, so still in an okay position as we're now coming through the Lesmo corners and working our way up into the Ascari chicane, and just try and hold on now. The pit stop phase is coming, and it's going to be really interesting about on the second stint how the race will progress. And this is why I just wanted to really sit back. We're going to be pitting on this lap as we come through the Ascari chicane, and as we go through the chicane we're going to slow it down now. We have a massive moment of oversteer as we come off the exit. You can see the opposite lock. I'm having to put in a lot of work on the steering wheel. Now that was really a scary moment, going 140 miles per hour coming out of the Ascari chicane on worn tyres, and the rear started to do that. That was a real really scary moment that nearly caught me out, but luckily managed to hold on to the car and keep myself right on the rear of M. Thomas as we're coming through to the pit stop phase now. Going straight in the pits, new set of tyres, no refuel in this race. Obviously we had plenty of fuel, so just a case of swapping the tyres over, a new set of soft tyres. Now, Grasser in P3 decided to put the medium tyres on. He went for a different strategy. We went for the soft tyres. Maybe he thought that the 6 laps, it might give him a little bit of advantage on the final lap if he can just hold in the slipstream. However, what this is going to do now is slow myself down and M. Thomas, especially in the corners, and it's going to be a real pain to try and get past, obviously, because this is where we're going to be really fast now on the soft tyres, but he's going to have to be a bit more cautious on the medium tyres. You can see in the braking zone straight away actually catching us out a bit because he's got to brake that little bit earlier. I thought he would have been on the soft tyres. I didn't know he was on the medium tyres at this phase of the race, so that caught myself and M. Thomas out a bit there. I think how early he was on the brakes. We've got a lot more traction out the corners at this stage. I think we could have got past him. Maybe I don't know if M. Thomas had the opportunity to actually get a better exit off any of the corners, but really the softer tyres should have been able to pull past the medium tyres, although the speed delta difference wasn't as big as other tracks because you only had the first chicane that you come to, the 2 Lesmos and the Ascari chicane, where you're going to gain, that must be the final corner. Also as well you're going to gain a bit of time, but it's not a massive amount, so it's maybe only like half a second to 7/10 of a second difference, and then as the race goes on the mediums will be a bit better from lap 4 to 5. However, I found that when I tested the mediums, once they went horribly. They just disappeared, and there just wasn't as much grip. But obviously I tried it on the first stint, I think it was, with the heavy fuel, so I didn't really try it when the fuel was light. Maybe they were a bit better at that stage. But you can see again picking up the slipstream and going very much for the same strategies we did on the first stint, just sitting in the slipstream. You can see we've got a comfortable gap now to P6. We're not really under threat from that driver. So what we're going to do is just try and hold on to this position, braking nice and early again, not taking any risks. You can see how slowly I'm going through them, not really risking anything at all in terms of picking up a penalty or running to the back of another driver. It's all about playing it safe at this stage. I didn't want to take any chance of losing this position, but then on the exit there of the first Lesmo, we got the rear on the curb again, and another massive oversteer moment that we managed to catch and actually kept on it slightly. We lost a bit of time, but it wasn't a massive amount of time. You can see that did give Matty behind us a chance to get into our slipstream. So what we're going to have to do now is try and make sure we hook up the Ascari chicane and pick up speed on the exit to get into M. Thomas's slipstream, as he's going to be getting the slipstream off of Grasser in front of him, and I've not really got a massive slipstream to defend against Matty at this point, so I'm going to have to get a nice apex into this final corner and ensure I get on the power nice and early as we come out the exit. You can see there getting on the power nice and early, using the full width for the track, and now we're just about picking up the slipstream of M. Thomas, so we should be okay in terms of defending against Matty now as we go into turn 1. So that was really important to make sure that we picked up a slight toe, because once he pulls out to try and make a move, we're going to be still getting that slipstream and getting the benefit of that extra power down the straight. But you can see they're going side by side now. M. Thomas is having a look to make a move, but Grasser's going very defensive. It's not an easy track to overtake, if I'm brutally honest. If you're in the slipstream like close enough coming out the final corner, then it's not too bad. You can just breeze past someone. But if you can't get in the slipstream that well coming out the final corner, then you tend to find that going into turn 1's really a difficult place to overtake, because of the speed that you're going in. It's hard to pick your braking spot because you're going that much faster. And M. Thomas wasn't able to make that move that time, but we're going to try and get into the slipstream again and try and see if we can make a move past Thomas soon. It's coming to the end. We're coming to the last phase of this race now. Obviously the end of lap 8. I know I need to make a move at some point, so we're going to start pushing. You can see we're going to start gaining on Thomas now, and if we have a chance of an overtake now, I think we're going to take it, but we're probably not going to go for it in turn 1. Turn 1 was obviously, I say turn 1, but the chicane, because turn 1 is actually the long fast right hand corner, which is flat out, but we won't go for it in the chicane because it's very, very risky. You can see we've got quite a big slipstream now. He's going to just be in the slipstream of Grasser, but we've got a much stronger slipstream off of Thomas at this point. So we're going to pick that slipstream. You can see the lap times on the right hand side have been really poor so far in this race. You can see again, obviously when you're in the dirty air, battling away, you don't really have the ability to put down solid lap time. So a little bit scruffy the race pace at the moment. We're going to have a little look on the right hand side, but again, we had a look on the left there, decided to back out of that, back into the normal racing line and not risking a move there. Just decided to stay in the normal racing line and just try and get a solid exit, which we do, and we had a little look then going into the first Les mode corner, wasn't able to make that move, and again picking up the slipstream, again having a little look on the inside there. I can see that he seems to be struggling at this point, Thomas, whether it's with tyre wear or what, but now we've got a slipstream and he hasn't got the slipstream of Grasser in front of him. So this is the difference now. When they haven't got the slipstream, we're going to be able to get the car alongside, pulling over to the left hand side into the braking zone, braking a little bit later. Nice early apex into the corner, and we've got ourselves up into P4. A great move there, nicely done on the inside. And now we can set about trying to catch up to P3, although we've now got the drivers behind us in the slipstream. So what I need to do now is I needed to try and make sure I get a nice solid exit from this corner. We've got 2 laps to go. Grasser's about 2 seconds up the road. He looks like he's struggling with the tyres though at this point of the race. Maybe the medium tyres were not the right choice. It's hard to say. This is the point of the race where they should be a bit better than the softs, but I found them on the first stint when I tested them in the practice session not to be that great. As you can see now, managing to get that nice solid exit off the final corners, give me the gap to Thomas behind us, and he's not able to really pick up a big enough slipstream to go for a move as we go through turn 1 and then into the braking zone. We're just going to go over to the right side for our normal braking line, brake as early as late as I dare, but trying not to brake too late, and picking that apex quite nicely there. You can see we're actually gaining on Grasser at this point and starting to lose and actually extend a bit of a gap to P5, Thomas there, who seems to have definitely be struggling with the tyre wear or something with that car. I'm not sure what tyres he was on, whether he was on the mediums as well. I believe he was on the racing softs when I did check, although I can't remember 100% now as we're coming back through to the Escari chicane. Before we start the last lap, can we, this was the aim now, was to try and see if I could get into the slipstreams, so driving really aggressive through there, on the power nice and early, trying to carry speed through that corner. You can see we've actually done a great job there and actually completely lost the slipstream to the drivers behind, and now we're going to see if we can just latch onto the slipstream somewhere. Can we get into it on this straight by just taking this corner really smoothly and nicely? You can see on the power nice and early, a little bit of oversteer as we come off the exit, however it wasn't that bad. We're still on the power and we're just outside the slipstream. A little bit frustrating at this point. We're about 1.1 seconds back, but we're going into the final lap now, and is he going to be starting to feel on the pressure now at this stage, as it looks like we might be edging closer to that slipstream all the way down the straight, as we obviously got a slightly better exit off the final corner and then breaking into turn 1. How close will we be to the slipstream as we go into the chicane now? Nice and early on the brakes, trying not to brake too late, trying to hook the apex of the corner up and the apex of that corner, but he's had a massive moment. What did the pressure get to him? I don't know, but he made a mistake. Obviously I tried to get on with it and really put him under pressure, and it looks like it's paid off, and we've managed to get ourselves up into P3 in this race. So from nowhere, actually got a reasonably good result with some very patient driving. We didn't go for any rash moves, we kept it nice and smooth, and we've been rewarded with a great P3. I think we had a lot more pace than what we showed in this race. Obviously in the practice race we managed to finish much faster than what this race is going to be finished in. I think we finished this race in 42 seconds or something, which is a full 8 seconds slower than what we did in the practice race. So it shows that the pace was really off when we were in the traffic, but that tends to happen once you're battling with other cars. You do tend to obviously struggle to put the lap times down because you're battling that much and you're having to brake early. You've got the dirty air effect. As we now go over the line and pick up a very good result from where we started, and obviously the position that we were in. Come over the line in P3, a solid result. Not the greatest finishing time, but I know I had the speed to do much better. It's just the qualifying again let me down. One thing again, we need to work on qualifying with the new wheel. It's one area that I think I need to start trying to hook up a bit more. Maybe comes down to maybe doing a bit more practice before the races also. Anyway, hope you enjoyed them videos. I thoroughly enjoyed both of them races. Really entertaining battles. Unfortunately, Grasser made that little mistake. I don't know whether we were definitely getting close to picking up the slipstream. Would we have picked it up before the back straight and been able to make a move into the final corner? I don't know. It would have been very close. However, he made that little bit of a mistake, lost it on the curb, and spun out into the wall. So we were gifted a P3. And it was a really fun race. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already subscribed. Click the notification button so you don't miss any future videos. And we'll be back very soon. Thanks again for watching, everyone.